Hey, welcome to Wednesday night service. I am glad that you guys are here. Tonight, we will be in 2 Kings chapter 5. We've been making our way through 1st and 2nd Kings. We started at the beginning of the year, and we're just trekking through. So we're on week, of a long series through 1st and 2nd Kings. But chapter 5, while you guys turn there, if you need a Bible, there's some in the basket, or you can use your phone. Hopefully you got a Bible, though. Definitely want to read along, follow along. But I'm going to recap what we talked about last time, which was chapter 4. In chapter 4, we saw Elisha perform 4 different miracles, and those miracles are as follows. First was he met with a widow and met her need. She was in need, and he met her need by, she had a jar of oil, and he basically said, hey, what do you have? I got a jar of oil. He's like, perfect. Now go to your neighbors, get a bunch of jars, as many as you can, and you're going to fill them with oil. And so she does. She starts pouring and just filling the jars, and as soon as all of the jars are filled, the oil stops. And it was enough to provide for her needs, and even more so. And so pretty cool. Next, we saw a Shunammite, a prominent Shunammite woman and her husband. They saw Elisha passing by back and forth, and it's like, hey, let's set up a room for this guy so he can have a place to stay, and just showed great hospitality. Because of this, Elisha's like, hey, I want to bless you. What can I do for you? And she's like, I'm a prominent woman. I'm good. He's like, well, you don't have a kid, so this time next year you're going to have a son. And she's like, whoa, don't get my hopes up. But she did have a son. However, once that son was older, he went out to the fields one day, and something was going on with his head. He goes, my head. The dad does a dad move, sends him back to mom, says, let mom take care of it. But the child dies. But the mom, trusting in the Lord and just knowing what to do, goes straight to the Lord via the man Elisha. And so she goes right to Elisha and says, hey, that son that you promised me and that I didn't ask for, but you gave me, yeah, he's dead. So I need you to come and help. And so Elisha goes back and raises that child back from the dead. Both of those miracles are very similar to miracles that Elisha's predecessor, performed, both with a widow in need and then with oil, and then raising a woman's dead son. 2 more, there was the sons of the prophets were gathering vegetables, and one of them gathered some wild vegetables that were poisonous, threw them into a big pot of stew, and it poisoned the pot of stew, so there was death in the pot of stew. Elisha comes along, and so they can't eat it. Elisha comes along, throws some flour in there, cleanses the pot, purifies the pot, and cleanses the death that is in that pot of stew, and they're able to eat it. And then the last one, there's 100 guys, and somebody brought 20 loaves of barley bread, but that was not enough to feed 100 guys. And Elisha's like, don't worry, it'll work, just do it. And they're like, are you sure? And he's like, feed them. And so they feed them, and it was more than enough. In fact, it fed all of them, and there was leftovers, and there was barley loaves, very similar and very much a foreshadow of Jesus feeding the 5,000 with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. And so pretty cool. God, through Elisha, was tending to personal needs of the people in chapter 4. And in chapter 5, that same trend is going to continue when he meets the needs of a certain commander of a foreign army. That commander's name is Naaman. Now, fun fact, you can go and look this up, but Jesus in Luke chapter 4 names Naaman specifically when he's talking to his hometown people of Nazareth. He says, just like Naaman was healed by Elisha. So go and check that out. Read chapter 4 of Luke. The cool thing there, though, is that if Jesus affirmed that and believed in that, then we too should believe in the validity of this story. Anything that Jesus believes in, we too should believe in. So pretty cool, pretty neat. But with that takes us right to where we are in chapter 5, but I'm going to pray before we get in. Father, I thank you just that every week we get to gather here and dive into your word. God, I thank you for your word. I thank you just for the transformative properties of your word. God, as we read it, it does not return void, and there's so much good stuff in here that we can learn and grow from. God, I pray that we can understand your truths tonight. I pray that we can inspect our hearts, God, and that we can just trust you for our salvation, God, that we don't try to work for our own salvation, but know that it is a free gift that we just receive from you, God. And I pray that we can be in control of our thought life. I pray that we can be in control of just our words and what we do. And God, just those lessons that we will see tonight, I pray that we can apply those to our lives just to make us better to serve you and to love other people. And so, just speak to our hearts tonight, Holy Spirit. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, chapter 5, verse 1. It says this, "Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram," some translations say Syria. Wow, it's already done raining. That's crazy. Just kidding. Distraction. Commander of the army of the king of Aram. Some translations say Syria. It's the same place, just different name. Don't worry about it. But Naaman was a great man in the view of his master and eminent, because by him, check this out, the Lord had given victory to Aram. So check this out. God, being sovereign and in control of everything, determines who wins every single battle, including Jewish and Israelite battles, but also Gentile battles. He was the one that was granting this guy victory because God is sovereign. God is in control. God cares about everyone and everything. Goes on to say, the man, that's Naaman, was a valiant warrior, but, and here's the problem of the narrative and the event tonight, but he was afflicted with leprosy. So just real quick, because I think this is going to be important for us, I want to remind us who the king of Aram is, the king of Syria. We were introduced to him back in 1 Kings chapter 20. His name is Ben-Hadad. If you'll remember, that's the guy that came to King Ahab in 1 Kings chapter 20 and demanded his wives and his children and his gold and silver. And King Ahab, being the coward that he was, just said, yep, I don't want any problems. Just take them. You can have them. They're yours, right? And so Ben-Hadad, being the bully that he is, comes back and says, oh, well, then I'll just take all of the things that are precious to you. Give that to me. At that point, Ahab's like, whoa, too far. You can have my wives, you can have my children, but I really like my dog. You can't take my dog. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what it was that was more precious than his wives and his children and all of his money, but he essentially didn't want to have everything taken. So at that point he said, can't do it, and they go to battle. So King Ahab and King Ben-Hadad then fight in two battles. The first one was in the mountains, if you'll remember. The second one was in the plains or the valleys, because Ben-Hadad's generals said, hey, they had victory in the mountains because their God is the God of the mountains, but not the God of the plains. So let's fight them in the plains. But Torrin Wells reminds us that he's the God of the hills and the valleys, right? Also, graves into gardens. I forgot about this when I was teaching it, but the second verse, because the God of the mountain is the God of the valleys, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you. Come on, sing it with me. Just kidding, don't sing it. Anyway, after that second battle, Ahab has Ben-Hadad cornered. So Ben-Hadad surrenders and pleads for mercy, right? And what is Ahab's response? He goes, oh, is he still alive? He is my brother. So this guy that just demanded everything and was going to steal everything from him was like, oh, I hope he's okay. He's my brother, right? Meanwhile, he's calling Elijah a troubler. This guy thinks Elijah is a troubler, and this guy, he's my brother. Like, woo, you could just see how twisted this guy is, how demented he is, right? So after this, there's 3 years of peace, and then Ben-Hadad is back to his troublesome ways and ends up having Ahab killed in battle by a random arrow shot by just some guy, just shoots an arrow and kills King Ahab. It strikes him in the joint of his armor, and he is dead. And so that's where we last left off at the end of 1 Kings. And that sets up tonight's narrative where the current king of Israel is Ahab's son, Jehoram, right? And the current king of Aram is Ben-Hadad. And I just say all this to keep that in mind because this chapter and then the next two chapters, which we'll talk about next week, neither of them actually name these guys. They just call them the king of Israel and the king of Aram. And so it's easy for us to forget the history that they share, right? It's easier for us to forget what they have in common. For me, I think there's probably some hard feelings. I don't know about you, but this comes to mind. Hello, my name is Jehoram, son of Ahab. You killed my father. Prepare to die. right? Princess Bride, anybody? Come on. Anyway, this just comes to mind. It's like, you killed my father, prepare to die, right? I don't know. There's probably some history here. Keep that in mind. Anyway, that's next week, somewhat tonight. But Naaman, let's get back to Naaman. Naaman is the commander then of Ben-Hadad's army. And it says that he has leprosy, which leprosy there is just a very broad term used for various skin diseases. You can learn and read and have fun with this, but you can read Leviticus chapter 13 and Leviticus chapter 14. They are page turners, let me tell you. But Leviticus chapter 13 is basically the diagnosis for various skin diseases, where Leviticus 14 is the purification rituals for those various skin diseases. Again, there's like 60 verses in both, and it's things that make it into the Bible. However, it does kind of foreshadow and point to events like this and help us understand them a little bit better. So, interesting. Have fun reading those. But verse 2 says this. Now the Arameans had gone out in bands and had taken, pay attention, underline this, captive a little girl from the land of Israel. And she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, if only my master were with the prophet, that being Elisha, who is in Samaria, then Elisha, could cure him of his leprosy. And Naaman went and told his master, that being King Ben-Hadad, saying, the girl who is from the land of Israel spoke such and such. So essentially, she said this, like that someone is in Israel that can cure me. And just take a moment to think about this. Think about how desperate this man is, right? He is willing to take a suggestion from a little foreign slave girl, right? Again, let that sink in for a moment. The commander of a great army is taking a suggestion from a little foreign slave girl. Like, he must be desperate. He's grasping at straws at this point. He's like, I don't know, that's the best thing I got going. So it says this in verse 5. So he goes and does it, right? And tells the king. And then the king of Aram said, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 shekels of gold and 10 changes of clothes. Now, I don't know about you, but that means nothing to me. It just sounds like a big old glob of gold and silver. I did some Googling. I did a little bit of research and a little bit of mathing. And based on conversions to how valuable that stuff was back then, based on the fact that they didn't have like gold rushes and all that stuff and modern digging stuff, gold and silver was very valuable. So essentially, this would be the equivalent of him showing up with a duffel bag with like $20 to $30 million in it. Like, he's got a duffel bag, or multiple duffel bags, with $20 to $30 million. Like, that's how much he's bringing to hope that this works, right? And then also this 10 changes of clothes doesn't mean like he brought a couple pairs of extra underwear and socks and a few pairs of shorts in case he got dirty. These are like super nice outfits. Think like top tier designer suits like Armani or Gucci or Tom Ford or whatever. These are $10,000 suits. He brings 10 of them, okay? And so he is bringing the best that he can to offer this as a reward for his healing, his cleansing. And it says this, verse 6, and he brought the letter to the king of Israel, that's Jehoram, which said, and now, as this letter comes to you, behold, I have sent Naaman, my servant, to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy. So, Jehoram, I need you, buddy, to cleanse him of his leprosy. But when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, am I God to kill and to keep alive, that this man is sending word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? But consider now and see how he is seeking a quarrel with me. He's seeking a fight. This is a trap, essentially. So Jehoram, he knows that he is no healer. He knows that he is not empowered by God to do such miraculous things. It's like, I've never healed anybody. I've never cured anybody of leprosy. Like, why are you coming to me? That you got the wrong guy, right? And so, rightly so, realistically, he's thinking, man, this must be a trap. Like, he's sending this guy to me who looks like a leper, who probably is a leper, just to be like, hey, heal me, and then he's going to shank me and kill me and be like, haha, assassination, and run, right? That's what he's thinking is going on, and rightly so, because he's no healer. But verse 8 says this. Now it happened when Elisha, so enter in Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent word to the king saying, and I love this, why'd you go and tear your clothes? Just have him come to me, and he shall learn that there is a prophet in Israel. Essentially, he's like, well, that was a waste of a perfectly good set of garments. Like, what'd you go doing something silly like that? Just send him my way. I'll show him. I'll teach him what's up. I'll show him who God is. He'll learn today, right? That's essentially what he's saying. And so, it says this in verse 9. So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots. He's got a big old parade, a big old entourage coming, and stood at the doorway of Elisha's house. And it says, Elisha, check this out, Elisha sent a messenger to him and said, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be clean, right? So that was the message. Elisha, it's kind of funny. Elisha's like, hey, I'm kind of busy. Carl, hey, can you go and just tell the guy, just dip in the Jordan River 7 times and it'll be clean? Thanks, Carl. You got it, buddy. Like, he doesn't even go himself. He just sends a messenger, right? And check this out. Verse 11. But Naaman was furious and went away, and he said, behold, I thought he will certainly come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand and call on the name, Sorry, I misread that line. And wave his hand over the site and cure the leprosy. Are Abana and Pharpar, the rivers in Damascus, not better than the waters of Israel? Could I not have washed in them and been clean? Or be clean. So he turned and went away in a rage. Essentially, he's like, man, we got rivers in Damascus that are far better. We got the Arbana and the Pharpar, which another name for Pharpar is just a par 5, because that's a far par. Just kidding. Golf joke. Anyway, but we got rivers in Damascus. Why I got to come and clean it or wash myself in this not so great river? Like, I don't know, but I've heard that it's not that clean of a river. So why, what? And so he leaves in a rage. And I think that he leaves mad for 2 reasons. One, and he says exactly why. So this is just pulling out of what he said. One, he felt disrespected because Elisha did not get up and meet him at the door, right? The first thing he said, he will certainly come out to me, but Elisha did not. I imagine a man with this much power was probably not used to being ignored and was probably used to all sorts of attention and groveling. But here Elisha is just like, hey, Carl, go take care of him. I'm kind of busy. Like, who knows? I'm doing Sudoku for today. Go and tell you, I don't know what he was doing. He's probably doing something important. Not that Sudoku's not important. But yeah. The second reason is he was expecting of being healed in a specific manner, right? He said, call and wave and cure, right? Call in the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the site, and cure the leprosy. However, both the greeting and the instructions did not meet his expectations, and so he went away in a rage, right? But check this out. There's a turn in the story. Verse 13. Then Naaman's servants approached and spoke to him, saying, my father, had the prophet told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? The servants are essentially saying to him, hey, had he told you to climb to the top of the highest mountain by yourself, carrying both wood and a ram on your shoulders up to the top to make a sacrifice to their God, you would have been like, oh yes, that is a heroic mission that deserves a heroic reward and a heroic healing. I will totally do that. But instead, he just told you to do something simple and easy, like, hey, there's a river right over there. Just go dip 7 times and you'll be good, right? But that, unfortunately, for some reason, doesn't live up to your heroic standard. And so they say this, essentially, why don't you just give it a try and see what happens? You might as well give it a shot. What can it hurt? Like, what better option do you have? You literally just listened to a little slave girl. What other options you got? Come on, we're here. When in Rome, go take a dip, buddy. 7 of them, actually. Go do it, right? So verse 14, he listens, right? And so it says, so he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times in accordance with the word of the man of God. And check this out. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Now, that clean word there doesn't necessarily mean like he was dirty and then didn't have any dirt on him. That's like ceremonially clean. That means like he's purified, he's healed, his flesh was restored. He no longer has leprosy, no longer has this disease. He is, again, fully restored and cleansed ceremonially. So, 2 quick takeaways from this event that I just want us to highlight. 1, so I want us to notice the unsung heroes of this event, and that being the servants, right? The first one that I want to point out was the little girl who had been taken captive from Israel in verse 2. She was bold enough to tell her master about the prophet who was in Samaria, right? Think about this. Despite her suffering and displacement, her confidence in Yahweh's prophet seemed to remain unshaken. Right? She wasn't a victim of her circumstances and, oh God, you've abandoned me, so I'm going to give up on you. No, like even in this displacement, even in these not so great circumstances, she's still pointing to Yahweh and Yahweh's servant and still being a little evangelist, right? This just kind of reminds me of Joseph at the end of Genesis, right? All of the bad circumstances, all the bad things, but never once did he turn away from God. He was always obedient. And then at the end of that, God glorified him and raised him up, right? And then he was able to say to his brothers, hey, what you meant for evil, God used for good, right? Same idea here, same thing. Despite her suffering and displacement, her confidence in Yahweh's prophet seemed to remain unshaken. The other servant are Naaman's servants in verse 13. They were bold enough to challenge their leader to reconsider his decision. Hey, Naaman, you're acting kind of proud here. You're acting kind of foolish. Like, why don't you reconsider what you're saying here? Don't walk away in a rage. Like, maybe just listen and try it, right? They essentially confronted his pride, but they did it with gentleness and respect, which is a very good tactic and one that we should keep in mind when confronting people. Do it with gentleness and respect. Now, Naaman was expecting to do some great thing that would cure some great man. However, what he was instructed to do was simple and humble. James 4:10 says, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. Right? You have to humble yourself and God will lift you up. Similar to what happened with Joseph. Again, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. And this event is just such a great picture of the gospel. I think this is exactly what Paul was talking about in 1 Corinthians 1:27 when he says that God has chosen what is foolish in the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen what is weak in the world to shame the strong. Right? Naaman, thinking that he was a wise guy, thought that this was a foolish endeavor. Like, this is dumb. Like, I'm not going to go dip in that river. That's foolish, right? And he was proven to be wrong. He was shamed, and he had to humble himself. He also thought that this was too weak. This was too humiliating. I'm not going to take off my clothes and go dip in the river. Like, I'm a strong, valiant warrior. I need to go fight a lion or do something like that. Climb to the top of the highest mountain, right? That's what I'll do. But no, this was a weak and foolish thing in his eyes, and he was put to shame, but he humbled himself, and so God healed him and lifted him up. So many people expect to earn their salvation through some great things that they do, and just like how Naaman wanted to earn his healing, however, the gospel requires us to humble ourselves and bend the knee to the lordship of Jesus Christ. The salvation and what Jesus offers is not something that you can earn or buy or pay for. Your salvation has already been paid for by Jesus' death on the cross. That's why he said, it is finished, tetelestai, paid in full. The debt is paid. And so therefore you cannot earn it. You can only receive it as an already paid for gift. right? And so 2 things more that I want us to learn from these servants, just really quick. One, don't be afraid to share the truth and point people towards the one who can truly save and heal them, right? Just like that young girl, she was not afraid to point people to the one who could truly save them and tell them the truth. So don't be afraid to do that. And number 2, don't be afraid to tell people to give it a try and give it a shot, right? Give it a try and see what happens. Give Jesus a chance to transform your life. Don't be afraid. Like, just tell people, like, hey, what do you have to lose? Try Jesus. Give it a shot. Walk it out for a while and see what happens. Like, what other better option do you have? I don't see one. Just try, right? Don't be afraid. People want that. People need that. So don't be afraid to tell them and share the truth and point them to the one and tell them to give it a shot. That's what those 2 servants did, and I think that's a good takeaway. So verse 15 says, Then Naaman returned to the man of God with all his company and came and stood before him. So this is the first time they actually see each other. Interesting. And he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant now. But Elisha said, As surely as the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will accept nothing. And Naaman urged him to accept it, but Elisha refused it. He refused the $20 to $30 million and the 10 designer suits, right? Naaman tries to give him this massive financial reward, but he refuses it. And this is why. Elisha knows that God's grace is free and his gifts are free. His salvation, or his gifts and salvation, cannot be purchased. He's like, hey, this is a free gift. I can't take anything for it. I can't take credit for it. You go and be well. Go in peace, he says here in a minute. And so verse 17, it says, Then Naaman said, If not, please let your servant, that's him, he's referring to himself, Naaman, be given 2 mules load of earth. He wants some dirt. For your servant will no longer offer burnt offering, nor a sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. Now, it doesn't tell us exactly why he wants all this dirt. One of my Bibles, in the commentaries, it referenced Exodus 20, 24 through 25, where it talks about building an altar out of dirt, bricks, rather than cut stones. And this is right after the 10 Commandments. However, I don't really think that this is what he was thinking, being a Gentile who literally just converted. I don't think he knows the intricate details of the Mosaic law. So I don't think he's like, hey, I need some dirt so I can build some bricks to build an altar to follow your law. I don't think he knows. Like, I don't even, like, who actually in here knew this was in there? I mean, you've probably read it, but like, who has this committed to memory? Us Gentiles, probably not. So I don't really think that this is the thing. Personally, I think he wanted to take home some dirt so that he could worship Yahweh on Israelite soil in his homeland, right? He wanted to have a plot of Israel's land on his personal property where he could worship Israel's God. I think it's similar to how the land that the embassy of a foreign nation is considered that foreign nation's land, even though it's in a foreign nation. And I know that's really confusing. Let me give an example. So the U.S. embassy that is in Germany, the U.S. embassy is considered U.S. soil, U.S. land, even though it's within Germany. And I think that's a similar thing. He's like, hey, this is going to be Israelite land, even though it's in Samaria or Aramea or wherever he's from. Aram or Samaria. Not Samaria. Syria. Hey, there we go. That's not in my translation, so I got to remember these off the top of my head. Aram. Anyway, I think that's what's going on there. And then he makes a second request in verse 18. It says, regarding this matter, may the Lord forgive your servant. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon, that's a false god that their culture worships, goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow down in the house of Rimmon. When I bow down in the house of Rimmon, may the Lord please forgive your servant in this matter. And he, Elisha, said to him, go in peace. So he went some distance from him. So Naaman asks for grace regarding his unavoidable civic duty to accompany his pagan king into the temple of the false god Rimmon. And Elisha says to him, go in peace, essentially showing him grace toward a young believer navigating a hostile pagan culture. Now, this coming Sunday, I believe that we will be in Romans chapter 14, which talks about those who are weak in the faith and kind of giving grace and showing grace to those type of things. And I think that section will shed some light on decisions and matters like this. You can also refer to 1 Corinthians chapter 8, which talks about eating food sacrificed to idols and whether you should or shouldn't and whether that defiles you or not. But in any case, I think it ultimately comes down to your heart. And Elisha knows this. It comes down to your heart. And if your heart is right with the Lord, and if it is, then the Lord will let you know if you need to cut something out of your life, even if it means walking away from a prominent position like being the commander of a very great army. If that's what God wants you to do, then you'll do it. And if you're not compromising, then he's going to say you're okay. But God will let you know those things. And so pray to him and trust in him. But verse 20. Little change of pace. We were introduced to this guy last week, and now we're going to learn more about him. But Gehazi, or however you say his name, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, thought. Keen in on that word, underline that word, circle that word. Gehazi thought. And this is what he thought. Behold, my master has spared this Naaman the Aramean by not accepting from his hand what he brought. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. And so that right there is why we need to take every thought captive. Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 says that we don't live according to the flesh anymore, and because of that, we then need to take every thought captive to obey Christ. And we will see how this one thought becomes this man's downfall. So 21 says, so Gehazi pursued Naaman. Because he did not take his thought captive, his thought turned into an action, and he pursued Naaman. And when Naaman saw someone running after him, he came down from the chariot to meet him and said, is everything well? And he said, everything is well. My master has sent me, saying, behold, just now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come down to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes. Lies. These are lies. And so when you think evil thoughts and pursue those evil thoughts, you often have to lie to hide those evil thoughts and motives in an attempt to get away with them, right? But you cannot lie to God or hide your true motives from him. And that's what we will see. So, verse 23, Naaman said, be sure to take 2 talents. Hey, I'm generous. You got 2 guys? Take a talent for each. Not just 1, take 2 talents. And he urged him and tied up 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothes and gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them before him. And when he came to the hill, he took them from their hand and deposited them in the house. So he's like, hey, that's far enough. You can stop here. I'll take it the rest of the way. And he runs and drops it in the house. He deposits them in the house. And he sent the men away, and they departed. But, verse 25, but he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said to him, where have you been, Gehazi? And he said, your servant went nowhere. More lies, right? More lies. Then Elisha said to him, did my heart not go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? At that moment, Gehazi's heart probably just sank. He's like, oh, man, I'm caught. Like, yep, No need to lie anymore. You saw, like, ooh, right? Last time that we met, we went through chapter 4 of 2 Kings, and I said this, that prophets are not omniscient or all-knowing. And I said that in reference to Elisha not knowing why the Shunammite woman had come to him when her son had died, right? The Lord had hidden that or not revealed that to him, and so he didn't know why she was coming. But I went on to say that they only only supernaturally know what God has revealed to them, and not all things have been revealed to them. And they cannot and do not know anything supernaturally beyond what God reveals to them. However, in this case, this is an instance of God or of Elisha supernaturally knowing something because God had revealed it to him, right? He saw, he understood. It says, "Didn't my heart not go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Is it a time to accept money and to accept clothes, olive groves, vineyards, sheep, oxen, and male and female servants?" Man, what are you doing? Like, this is not a time to accept gifts and money. I turned it away for a reason. Like, come on now. And so it says this, "Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman," what I just cleansed that guy of, "it shall cling to you and to your descendants forever." So he went out from his presence afflicted with leprosy, white as snow. So this is interesting because this narrative and this chapter ends with a very sobering contrast. The pagan outsider is saved while the religious insider is judged. Like, let that sink in. The pagan outsider is saved while the religious insider is judged. And again, it all comes back to the heart. And that's why one is saved and one is judged, because of their heart. Gehazi prioritized worldly wealth over trusting God during a critical moment of spiritual awakening for a prominent Gentile leader. Like, think about this. This man is super prominent. He is the leader of the army, and he just got saved, quote unquote, and is going back to his homeland. Like, think about the spiritual impact that could have. And Gehazi is not even concerned about that. He's just concerned about, "Ooh, hey, there goes a big old paycheck. I better go cash in on that before he leaves and never comes back." Like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing? Well, actually, I'll say this. There are 3 traps that often trip up a man, and they are the 3 G's. These are the 3 G's that often trip up a man. And they are girls, glory, and gold, right? Those 3 things often trip up a man, and you need men, especially, you could say guys if you're a girl, and you could switch it so it still works for you ladies. I don't know if that list applies, but for men, that definitely is true. And right here we see girls, glory, but gold. Gold was the thing that tripped Gehazi up. Gehazi wanted worldly treasure over heavenly treasure. And Jesus, he warns against this in Matthew chapter 16, verses 19 through 21. He says this, "Don't store up for yourself treasure on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal it, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and neither thieves break in and steal." Check this out. This is the key right here. "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So here's a question. Where is your treasure located? Where is your treasure located? Because that is where your heart is located also. And the Lord wants your heart. That's why the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength, but all of your heart. He wants your heart because he knows for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so we just got to pay attention to this. And Gehazi represents the danger of proximity to things holy without a transformed heart. He was around all of this stuff, but his heart wasn't transformed. I think he had the comfort of and this not unnatural, but this unjustified safety or whatever of thinking that he was good because he was around the right people and around holy things, but his heart was not transformed, right? He saw the miracles, he heard the truth, he worked alongside the prophet, and yet his heart was turned toward the world instead of toward the Lord, right? And I just talked about this last Sunday when I taught through the end of Romans 13, but about playing church and pretending to be a Christian, right? These are not good things. And Gehazi, in many ways, kind of represents those who are playing church and pretending to be a Christian. They think that because they're in the right proximity to things that they're good. But if your heart is not right, then that doesn't matter. You can go to church every single day of the week. If your heart isn't right, it doesn't matter. And so I'll end with 3 takeaways, and then we can pray. But takeaway number 1 is this. Remember the boldness of the servants. Pointing out those 2 servants one more time, you got the young slave girl who pointed others to the Lord. And so an encouragement is to not be afraid to share the truth and point people towards the one who can truly save them and heal them. Don't be afraid to point people towards Jesus and tell them the truth. And then the other servant and their boldness is how Naaman's servants challenged his pride and called him out in gentleness and respect. And they essentially said, hey, they weren't afraid. They basically said, hey, why don't you give it a shot? And so we should also not be afraid to say, hey, give Jesus a try. Give him your heart. Give him a chance to transform your life. Like if it doesn't work, whatever, but at least give it a shot, right? And encourage people to give it a shot. It's the K-Love 30-day challenge, right? Give them the Jesus 30-day challenge. Give Jesus 30 days to change your heart. And he will, I promise, right? There is one prayer that Jesus always says yes to, and that's when a sinner asks for forgiveness and asks to let Jesus be his Lord and Savior. The sinner's prayer, Jesus, I'm a sinner. Will you be the Lord of my life? The answer is 100% always yes, right? Let people pray, encourage people to pray that prayer and point them to Jesus. Number 2 is you cannot earn your own salvation. Right? Naaman was expecting to do some great thing so that that would cure some great man of this disease, right? However, he was instructed to do something that was simple and humble. You cannot earn your salvation. You can only receive it. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, for you are saved by grace through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it is God's gift, not from works, so that no one can boast. It's nothing that you did, it's everything that God did. You cannot earn it, you can only receive it. And what you do to receive it is a very simple and humble thing. Romans 10:9-10 says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. One believes with the heart, resulting in righteousness, and one confesses with the mouth, resulting in salvation. Confess with your mouth and believe in your heart. Again, it goes back to the heart. So many people expect to earn their salvation through these great things that they do, that they can get their self into heaven because they're such a good person. And just like how Naaman wanted to earn his healing, it didn't work. The gospel requires us to humble ourselves and bend the knee to the lordship of Jesus Christ. It's not something you can earn or buy or pay for. Your salvation already has been paid for by Jesus' death on the cross. And then last is that we need to take every thought captive to obey Christ. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. We see that because Gehazi failed to take his thought captive, that one thought, that thought turned then into an action that resulted in his downfall. One thought. One poor decision can be your demise. There's a story going on in the news right now about how somebody, a young man, made one poor decision and that has ruined his life and he is in prison for the rest of his life because of this one decision. Now, I don't need to go into details because honestly and sadly, that is a very common occurrence, right? How often is it just one decision that somebody makes that ruins their lives forever, right? And here, Naaman, this one poor decision, and now he and his descendants are cursed with Naaman's leprosy. Man, we really need to pay attention. And so, we have to take our thoughts captive. And so, do you find your thoughts leading you into sinful actions? If so, be aware of stumbling blocks in your life. Remember the gold, the girls, and the glory. Those are big stumbling blocks for men, but there's many others. In Romans 13:14, what I taught on last Sunday, just a couple days ago, it ends by saying, put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. And a great way to take your thoughts captive is to be meditating on God's word day and night. Keep your mind focused on things of God and not things that will gratify the flesh. Don't give in to those sinful desires. Put up massive barriers and take those thoughts captive and don't let them be your demise. And so